All right, we are back over here. We are trying to sort things out here. I know people are starting to join in and trying to iron out a couple of technical difficulties as always. But let me see if I can stop presenting. So all of our faces are shown. Okay. So here we have Ted back in the show again, which is great to see always. Hi,
Good
Ted.
evening.
How are you doing?
I can't complain. I'm here. I'm looking forward to checking out this video. I've not actually seen this yet.
Yeah, I just seen like a first, I would say 5 second of it, and I kind of enjoyed what it was showing. So I'm looking forward to seeing this as well. I'm trying to work out the crop on the stream here since your head is cut off. So I'm trying to make sure we get some less trim. You're growing there. um, let's see. Maybe if I go something like 10.
That's getting there.
All right, we are golden. Yeah, I switched out a bunch of things, so I'm trying to still iron out. And apparently, Ted's lost his headset.
Yeah, always something.
Yep, always something. But, it's keeps it fresh and making sure all of our gears work is always a challenge, but we'll get through it. So, looks like we've got some people. I don't know how to pronounce his name. His name is Farhana. I'm kind of guessing. I don't know how to pronounce that J, but he's left super on all of my videos as a comment. So he's here in the chat and joined, and he spelled that out again. So good to see you here. Um, I hope I did not butcher your name there. So we have a video that we want to share today. I just came across a video that was made in Lumion, and you can obviously check out their YouTube channel. Let me go to their channel and leave the link in the description. Sorry, the on the comment section. And basically, I also have left it on the description, so you can click on that if you guys are watching this on recording. Basically, that is a video that I thought it's worth kind of doing a bit of a critique on. So I'm gonna come from a little bit of architectural background, whereas Ted here is a professional. How do you usually title yourself when?
Um, uh, 3D artist essentially.
Okay, so he's
Best.
he's coming from 3D artist point of view, and then
I
we're
make pretty
gonna
pictures for architects.
right. So we all have a bit of overlap, but he comes slightly from a different skew than I am, and hopefully we will be able to just kind of give our inputs based on our personal skills and experiences and develop an opinion and perhaps present to you. So is what we're planning on. And I don't know why, but my sound is jumping, and I'm guessing it is feedbacking somehow. But let me know if you guys are receiving well, because I do see the volume going okay. But if you have any problem, let me know. So let me go ahead and just jump right into sharing. So let's share this screen, and if I do, we should all be seeing the screen. And I'm on the very first second here. So the following video was created by Beehive and shows a compilation of architectural design by Aedas. The scene and render were made using Lumion 11 and Radeon Pro W6800 32 gigabytes graphics card, which kind of made me a little bit puzzled. So just let's talk a little bit of tech here. Are you completely familiar with Radeon cards?
I've used them in the past, and they're great cards if you've got very specific tasks that you're doing that use those cards.
Yeah, and the fact that it has 32 gigabytes is a hefty amount of
Yeah,
VRAM there. So
yeah,
I assume this file is very large, and it's a city model, so I assume it is very large model. And when you have large amount of geometry and renderings to do, then that is basically uh, very restrictive over VRAM. So you want to have as much VRAM as possible is typically
correct.
what we need to be mindful of. However, if you're not dealing with like CD scale of project, then you also don't need that much is another aspect you need to consider.
Yes and no. I'm going to disagree with you on one point there. It depends on the density of your scene more than the scale of your scene. So, for instance, I can make an interior scene just as dense as I can make a giant cityscape. It just depends on the density of content within the project. So, essentially, you can push the card on either side. If you have lots and lots of trees, that's going to be just as labor intensive and memory intensive as having extremely dense 3D assets within an interior scene. So it's really just number of polygons and size of textures. I find textures are usually what push you over the edge at this point because everything's skewing more towards 4K and 8K, and I've even seen up to 16K textures start floating around, and those will chew through RAM so fast.
Yeah. And it's because, the total amount of geometry or detail or material that's really feeding into the amount of VRAM. So I do agree with you on that point. Not necessarily the entire scale, but more so on amount of polygons and the things
Mm-hmm.
that graphic card needs to process on. So let's go ahead and play a couple of seconds and just let me know if you would like to stop somewhere, but I'm gonna roll. Let me make sure the volume is here. I don't have a popcorn, so we're just gonna stand here and watch.
Yeah, these city scale shots are pretty impressive.
It is. So it's setting out the overall scale. Let me just lower the volume a little bit. I like the music, but it can be kind of overpowering at times. Okay, so I'm just gonna stop there. It was a 1 minute mark right there. A couple of things that you notice.
So I mean, these are some pretty large models. I'm curious.
Shall we roll back somewhere? Something that I did notice is the fact that, it starts from very far out and then it kind of starts to zoom in. Obviously, it's coming in different angles, but you get up and closer and closer. First, you were seeing the whole composition of buildings, and then now you're in between two towers, or whatever that this person is trying to show. Where is or what is Aedas City? Do you know?
So, as far as I can tell, this is just a
Like a
fictitious
concept?
city that they're using all of their project models in. I could be wrong, but that's my guess right now. Because I don't know much about the company
Well, I know
specifically.
Aedas is an architectural design firm, or I just did a Google as well. It says Aedas is an international architectural firm, so that
Right.
kind of confirms it. But I guess it is sort of a virtual city that they are designing, or
I think this is a fictitious city that they're just using assets in.
mm-hmm.
All their different projects are getting dumped in here. I mean, there's if you scroll forward just a little bit
Yeah, sure.
to the next scene, uh, forward other way,
The other way.
just after this scene, we're at street level,
Uh-huh.
right there. So that says Chambers Street Station, Traders Center. I that looks like a generic asset. Could be New York, could be most places in the U.S. So again, I think this is just a project where they were either approached by Lumion or by a third party and said, "Hey, what can you do?" Um, and or they're just using it as a showcase to say, "Hey, this is what we can do," and they just threw all the assets at this.
Looks like
Um,
it. Yeah, so whatever that they've done before, they're just throwing and combining into one shot. Welcome to Aedas City, rendering project unlike other, combining architectural design masteries, blah, 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 largest animation project in Lumion, and discover seven of Aeda's spectacular designs compiled into a vast fictional city. There you go.
there
Rendered
we
to
go.
push Lumion's limits and see what's truly possible at any scale. So, yeah, it is sort of
All
a
it takes is a little bit of reading.
yeah, but yeah, we were just trying to do guessing game. Obviously, we're
Yeah.
reacting to this, so that's how we are
So
rolling.
one thing that, as we're watching this, for people to remember, this might be lots of different shots that they're creating with this, but this is not one model.
I was
Um,
actually skeptical on that too. Like, it kind of makes it sound like largest architectural render ever. So it makes it sound like it has everything in here, but
I'm
uh,
sure there are shots that have lots and lots of stuff. Like that one is a perfect example right there that you have up. Um, a lot of that is geometry in the background. Now, I don't know. It looks like maybe some New York assets and maybe some Chicago assets dropped in there just as background
yeah,
elements.
but the sheer amount of towers you see in here is not really, I mean, obviously we're looking at only one angle, but is not really apparent in here. So I wonder, if all of those towers actually do exist on this single model versus this is somehow combining several models.
I think it's just a mix and match. Like as they combined assets, like that is a big scene that is right there. That's a massive scene.
Right.
And I imagine it's probably a mixture of like scan data, their existing design elements that they're pulling in from past projects, and then just generic building assets that they either have on file or are generating quickly. Because these, a lot of times, what you do when you've got big, like large scale models like this, is you generate lots of shell buildings that you can populate, just generally speaking, in different areas to make it look like the city, but they're very low poly, they're very low resolution so that they're not chewing through your memory. So I imagine that's probably what they're doing a little bit of here. Um, like as it's all about level of detail. Those buildings in the background don't need to be anything more than a rectangle with a texture on it because you're not going to see them up close.
Yep.
But man,
Um,
that's a lot of geometry nonetheless.
absolutely is. I'm actually going to pause here in terms of the screen sharing. I'm noticing the fact that I'm just feeding or eating up too much of my bandwidth. So let me see if I can come out of one of the meeting and see if I can just present here and also see my screen. Um, share. Okay, that works. It didn't work last time. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, okay. All right, that should feed just fine. Okay, now we're in business. Sorry, I was eating quite a bit of bandwidth. I just wanted to clear that up. Okay, so shall we discuss a couple of techniques here? So here it kind of slowly zooms in. I'm just gonna mute it, and then you got sort of the eye level shot. So let's talk about some animated people. Do you think they are necessary?
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to communicate. I think in this case it works well only because they're not front and center. They're secondary and tertiary. You tend to not want 3D characters walking around in like clear view of your rendering because it's always a little bit jarring to the viewer just because unless you nail the very fluid motion of somebody walking and the way their clothing fits on them, unless you nail that, it always feels a little bit stiff and robotic. um, it can be done, but sometimes because a lot of these assets are kind of pre-baked, it can look a little bit janky. Um, but I think it works well in this scene. You know, you've got a few people at the bottom of the building there, kind of walking through in front of the lobby and through the lobby. And on the left, you've got some of these guys, construction workers doing something and somebody walking to work. But notice that all the people in the foreground are very dark. Lighting is not accentuating them in any way, shape, or form. Your view is spot on that building, and that's key.
Yep. So it's all about drawing attention to what you were trying to show. And I've said this in a couple of different presentations and such. People are so tricky. Us human are so distracted to other human beings' faces. So that's one of the thing. You want to put the people away from the center of the screen, as Ted said, and perhaps in a distance where it kind of makes sense. And also another technique is to turn them away from the camera. So either they
Mm-hmm.
walk away or they're just turned around or look at the side, but never show the face because whether you like it or not, people are just so drawn to faces. So even if they're fake faces where it is 3D made, people will glance at their faces before they glance at the architecture or the thing that you're trying to show. So,
Yeah, and it's typically referred to as the uncanny valley effect, and it just goes to the fact that our hindbrain, our lizard brain, is so adept at picking up facial cues and facial features that when something isn't quite right, it immediately goes to, "Ooh, what's going on? That doesn't look natural." It's like that one robot character that they always show on the news where she's talking to the person. It's just so uncomfortable to look at.
yep, yep. And notice all of these people are walking or riding bicycle away from you. So
Mm-hmm.
they never showing their
That's
faces.
also something that is important when you're doing renderings is drawing the eye in. So notice these are both 1 point perspectives. Most of them are 1 point perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the characters are going away from you as the viewer, but they're coming into a point that you're trying to focus the viewer's eye to.
Yep. So notice how everybody is looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
They're all facing away from you, and that is very intentional.
Yeah, these are just some pretty impressive renderings.
Shots.
There is one shot though that let's see here. If you go to trying to scrub through and find it, um, yeah, it's at 37 seconds.
37.
Yeah, so this shot,
The swimming
um,
pool.
right here, this very much looks to me like a backplate image behind the building. Like that looks very, very flat in the background. I don't know if they did this.
Now, can put like the photo behind as a
Mhm.
background in Lumion natively.
Set it slightly emissive and set it in the background, and you can get some pretty good results, and it cuts down on RAM. So if you look at the interior, there's tons of information in that interior.
I
Like you've
mean,
got
like all the
chairs and yeah, desks and desks that are on. So there's a lot of geometry in that one thing. And I imagine if you had all of that geometry plus all the geometry in the background, even with 32 gigs, you'd be hard pressed to get this to render effectively. I'm curious if that's the way they did it. I assume that is, but a backplate image of something else rendered definitely helps a lot of the time.
yeah, and they're not like wasting too much in terms of the RAM. I do see a couple of cars. They actually run very fast, but some of these are just static images, although they look like a car, but they are not actual asset. It's just more of an image. You see how that's pretty fast car, I would say.
Yeah,
By being kind of thinking
but yeah, that
about how much of an asset that you want to, because every asset or every detail, every material, everything that you put into the model is like a resource, and it is literally like you're spending, it's just like spending money. Every
yeah,
time you put
yeah,
down additional triangle or a face or a material, you're eating that much out of your graphics card, and not just the
yeah, and
storage.
with higher end visuals, typically what you try and do is post processing and the whole do it in post kind of approach. Even with video, you generate um, your rendered scenes, and then you stack those flat rendered elements together in a product like After Effects to get the final composited image. Because 9 times out of 10, nobody has the amount of RAM to get through these projects. Um, it's very rare to have the necessary hardware to do everything that you want to do. You usually have to do some level of um, value engineering
Yeah.
to get the final result.
Yeah, I
So,
like that. The value engineering of your model asset.
yep.
Here I am looking at, I just specifically picked this shot because I wanted to ask you your opinion or perhaps your technique about glass. So here, um, I don't know if any of you have listening have experience with rendering glass, but rendering glass could be difficult as well. And what sort of transparency, reflectancy, or refraction, what is it, the IOR, different sort of value in the tint. There's so much to glass, and making it convincing as well as functionally working is so difficult. So as you can see, so here is one type of glass where it's basically mirror glass. It is
Mm-hmm.
reflecting everything and not showing anything inside the building. So obviously, this is beneficial when you're trying to render something without having so much detail inside the building. And then also sometimes you want to show the geometry or the silhouette and the shape of a building rather than what's inside, then it's useful. But when you actually want to show inside, then you use different type of glass or rendering settings so that the glass actually is transparent but reads somewhat reflective, so it does catch some areas that are reflecting some light, and there's
Yeah.
light, and it's
So
very
this is
tricky, isn't it?
it is. So this is where, artistic interpretation comes into play in a big way. In reality, you probably won't be able to see at this time of day inside this building at this level of detail. It's glass is typically pretty reflective. In real life, you're going to see the reflection of everything else, not the interior of the building, even if it is a very clear glass. So I imagine this is where the artist makes the executive decision that I'm going to use a simple clear plane of glass. I'm going to lower the reflectance of that glass material so that I can focus the eye on the interior and all the glowing bits on the inside. And then the background buildings, because they are less important for this particular shot, are going to be more reflective and generate kind of contrast between the foreground and the background. Um, that's my assumption. And glass is always a pain, no matter how you cut it. Um,
Because you've got
so,
to have light inside the building to show anything. Otherwise,
mhm,
it shows black. And that's how it is physically. That's the way glass and light behaves when they're combined together. If you got nothing inside, then it is not going to show you anything, no matter how
mhm,
reflective. And you probably don't want to show if you have nothing inside. So that's another thing. And, putting down these sort of assets inside. Something that I've gotten away is to make a box with a flat image and emissive image behind it, just so that it reads as I feel like that might be how it is done. So you have a offset of a box behind the glass, and then you basically set some emissivity, and it's showing as a shot front. I
yeah,
think that might be like repeated up and down, but that's a good technique. But also in a still shot, I've done, or I have seen done, some photoshopping so that you just kind of lift one area and just kind of burn it out so that it reads like some sort of reflection, and it becomes very ambiguous what that exactly is, but it does read like glass. And I've done that sort of technique where it kind of reads as a reflection. But here it makes me a little bit puzzled since this is a video and that is kind of consistent. So that's probably not photoshopped is or premiered in that aspect. But
yeah.
yeah, it is
But I
sort of
mean, you
a
can do that in
technique.
Premiere too. So
You can, but how much is actually touched up, I don't know. I
yeah,
want I want to assume none, but you never know.
this looks pretty raw with maybe some light color correction after the fact. I wouldn't say this is over processed.
Yeah, and
This scene is a
it's
little over processed.
yeah. So this specific scene, I don't know. I don't know how clear it is on the shared screen or the screen that is being recorded, but there's a bit of like jitter and sort of
That I think is more to do um,
shallow
with
depth of field.
Lumion.
That's what I'm guessing.
Wait, are you saying the frame rate is slow, or are you saying
No,
that
there is a bit of like there's like sort of waving, and I don't know if it is
that's
because
Lumion?
yeah, so it's set a very very shallow depth of field to kind of give this toy-like scene, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what
Almost model-esque.
a model-esque. And the toy-like, there is a lens. What is it? A vertical shift lens
A tilt
effect?
shift lens,
Tilt shift.
yeah.
There you go. So yeah, tilt shift basically is very shallow focus on a specific horizontal pane, and therefore everything is blurred out. Therefore, kind of giving that nice toy look. And I think it is what it's doing, but also at the same time blurring and shallow depth of field effect is kind of I would say it
It's
does
not
eat up.
calculated well inside of Lumion. So that's one gripe that I have with Lumion's depth of field is when you go too far with it, you start to get a
Artifacts.
haloing effect
Yeah.
and then flickering, a lot of flickering. It's almost like with the iPhone when you use too much of that portrait filter, and like just the hair is in focus, but there's strands that it's not picking up because it's too fine. Lumion's doing a similar process, I think, where they're like, okay, this thing is in the foreground, this thing is in the background, and they're um, attenuating the depth of field to guess where that is, and the clipping ends up causing some weird issues.
Yeah, the
Um,
artifact that I was seeing is it was sort of like I would say like water wave like. It kind of
mhm,
there's a little bit
like a
of
flicker.
a flicker at the very center in between these trees when I play it. So that's one thing. And also, how do you, so I'm also guessing again the same technique where a pane of behind the glass there's a box and with the emissive image of a shot front image that's been applied here. There's some weird blurring going on here, but it's hard to tell because when you actually have a camera and have a bokeh effect, you don't have these weird sort of outline. It is a bit more smooth. You probably can see some, but my face is sharp because my camera is focusing on me. But if everything in the background kind of starts to blur out in a more kind of gradual way. But this is a bit jarring because it's so shallow and Lumion is processing all of that at the same time it is rendering, and there's a bit of artifact, and it looks a little bit jarring to me.
Yeah, I mean, I also think our eyes are pretty well attenuated to notice those things, whereas, like, the layperson is probably not going to focus on that quite as much as we do.
Oh, yeah, and we are stopping like every second and dissecting this
Yeah, yeah.
rendering. So obviously, we're doing this to critique and give our sort of experience, or I don't want to say professional because I'm not professional renderer, but your professional opinion about it. So, we're probably being a bit too harsh on whoever done this as well as Lumion, but um, I just wanted to cover a couple of things that I have noticed based on my little bit of rendering experience.
Hmm.
And here, again, I wonder, like, you see the same groups of people that's been repeated, and none of them are animating. But is this something that Lumion does?
Yeah.
Is
So,
this an image?
which
The
people?
this sort of plaza, because as tech sharp as it is, it looks not really Lumion esque, don't you think? These
No, I mean
people.
that's all 3D, definitely.
Okay.
So I think what's happening here is Lumion, if you turn off depth of field altogether, or if you turn it way down, you get very, very sharp images of everything. And I think that's just what's happening here is, there's zero depth of field on it, so it's just in very sharp focus. So it kind of plays tricks on the eye, but you almost want that with this. I think my only
Do
thing,
is there option where all the people come to a halt? Because here none of the people are moving, and
I think these are just so I'm seeing repetition in the people on the ground. I think this is just using the scatter brush with a group or a couple of groups of people, and they just scattered them around in the plaza. Just because,
those are stopped people. They don't
yeah,
animate
just collection of groups of people. Because let's see here, that shot is. Let's see, give me a
at
second.
1 minute mark. So I do notice the water shedding on the fountain, and there's a same groups of people repeating, which is
So
typical. Not to pick on it,
I
but
mean, that's for a 4 second shot. So for in reality, with the transition at either end, it's like a 3 second shot. At the eye, like at the lower level where you see those people, I think it's one of those things where hand placing groups of people walking around is just not. It's not feasible at for a
No,
three second
I don't
shot.
think you should, and I think it's great that this person or Lumion has done this effect. But I didn't because I see this a lot in Photoshop where you get these sort of dots and groups of people and you just brush them or copy and paste on those spots so
Hmm.
that you kind of fill out the overall plaza or landscape. But and obviously they're static because of that. But from my understanding, mostly normally, all the people are animated in Lumion. So I was expecting them to move a little bit at the least, even though distance.
I think there are like you can set up collections, and they this may be a custom asset that they have. So that
Right.
may be why it's not animated. That it's just a group of people that they collected and dropped in the scene and scattered around. So that could be it too. I mean, there's any number of ways to do it.
And I do want to
So,
point out the vertical water too. That's another thing like not many renderers do very well.
oh,
Fountain,
falling water.
a falling water.
Yeah. So that's because water is very difficult to render to begin with. And 3D water falling off of a ledge is just you've got two different ways to do it. You can do a card where it's rendering an animation of whatever it is that's falling, or you can go into 3ds Max or Blender or some other 3D application, generate particle effect of um, water flowing over an edge, render that out, and drop that animated thing into your scene and just chew through your RAM. Or you can do it in post in After Effects. But all three of those options are incredibly difficult. So Lumion made it really easy. They've just got a texture that it gets the point across. There's a waterfall here.
Yep,
Sometimes
everyone
it's
understands
gray.
it. It's not as difficult, and I think they do it very well in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the one thing that really bugs me about this is the grass on the roof on the left is so poorly tiled.
Is it okay? I did not notice that.
My eye just immediately goes to tiling.
True. Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of tiling. I was also picking out like undulating water in the very back as well, and I thought it was nice.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a ripple of water just over the edge, so I suppose it goes to sort of
That
the
might actually be an
infinity.
artifact.
It might be, yeah, it must be. Yeah, it's static. Never mind. Yeah, it is an artifact, but it does look like that's just so done well. I really like this shot. It's done really well. Only it's only a couple of seconds, but some of the shots are done really well.
Yeah, the one that I know it's just kind of like they're showing off new features of Lumion, I'm sure, but at about what is it? Just past that minute 20,
Mm.
as all the buildings come
Uh,
together.
yeah.
This one,
That was a bit
um,
jarring. I did make the face.
I don't dislike it. I think it's a fun shot, but this one's really pretty. What's playing right now? Just after the drop in, where it's almost like a time lapse as they're looping around. I think it's at 124. This shot,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that is such a pretty shot.
There's one guy with the silhouette, and everybody else is just
Mm-hmm.
zooming by.
I
And
mean, I kind of wish they had done that in a more cinematic, slower frame rate than this. Like it felt too fast. I really do like that one.
yeah, but I really like so. There's a bit of a trend of everybody looking at the building that they're trying to show. And I think, there's something about this. There's even though it's like, what, 2 seconds, there is a story, meaning there's this guy looking at the building and you're just kind of going across and everybody's like zooming by. there's a bit of that, and that just makes my eye drawn to the building. Nothing
Yeah,
more so.
but even so, like the lighting in this is really kind of nice. Um, it's the bloom and the glare on the other buildings. It just feels really good. I really like this little short shot. I mean, it's 2 seconds maybe.
Is this like, uh, this is, I want to say 2 point perspective, but it looks even like overdone. The building looks like flaring out. Is that just me?
So the one thing with 2 point perspective and corrected verticals is at the center of the image, it almost looks like it's uh, you're getting parallax, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if you hold a ruler up to those, you should have a nice square line running up and down. I think it's just the fact of
My
the
brain is
perspective.
playing tricks.
Yeah, it's you know traditionally to get your parallels vertical, that's what a tilt shift lens is designed to do. It's a cool effect when you use a tilt shift to make a tiny city sort of effect. But the reality of it is the real tilt shift lens is designed to adjust your angle of the lens while not adjusting the angle of the camera to give you corrected horizontal and vertical elements in your view. So, the software is doing the same thing, and sometimes that can cause weird visual cues because our eyes don't see things like that in real life. Like it's straight, but because of the angle, it's always distorted up.
Right, right. I
So
mean, I personally prefer regular 1 point perspective over 2 point, but there is a bit of a trend of using 2 point perspective in architecture, so I do have to accept it.
well, I don't think it's necessarily a trend. I think it's just it's part of doing it. And nobody wants because a lot of people react negatively when their building looks very, very skewed the opposite direction.
I know. I know, but
But
I don't feel that way. Anyways, I like this one too.
yeah, this
There's
is a nice shot. I like the actually the characters feel very smooth in this one. Um,
all of these people are designed to be that place doing that thing, and there's a huge amount of thought that went in this. I don't think I'm ever up for putting this many people in my scene anyways,
it's
but
painstaking.
yeah, yeah. But, this artist has done a very good job of clearing the foreground so that there's no face that you can actually see and recognize. That's another thing. And also, made sure there are people more over at the pedestrian. I also, I mean, again, there's a kid hanging out on the street and there's no cars moving by, but it's still filled out quite well in terms of filling out the street. So I do like it.
I mean, the other thing that's great about these shots, any one of these animation shots can hold up by itself as a still. That's what's nice about this.
Right.
Like it right there, that's a shot.
Mm-hmm.
If you just back it up a second, like it's perfect. Same thing with this. If you just stop it right there, that's perfect. That by itself, you got a rendering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I will say on the next shot, there's some weird stuff happening with the reflections on the ground. Not this
Ooh.
one, but this one. Like the people look like they're floating, and I think that's just because there's no ground plane reflections on there.
Oh,
So
true.
Lumion does a weird thing because it's faking reflections.
Is
You
it?
have to manually go in and say, I want a highly reflective surface here. Um,
Like, yeah, I do see what you're talking about. There's no
there's
one.
no. ambient occlusion that is like there's no shadowing effect that where they're standing. That might be because the sun is turned way down, so you're not getting any harsh shadows. It could be any number of reasons. It's just, I mean, we're being hyper picky about this. This is a
We
beautiful show.
absolutely are. We are nitpicking to the ground on this one.
You know, there are also things called deadlines. So,
Yeah, and in real life, it's impossible. I can guarantee you, it's impossible to capture a real building this way. There's absolutely no way to capture a building like this. Just the lighting, there's just so much play in lighting, the glass reflectancy. Like, you've got this sort of overcasted sun with the fog in the back, um, and then getting that sort of wet ground look with that much of a reflection. It is pretty, but I don't think it's physically possible to do that. And a lot of times you really are like tweaking a lot of reality in renderings to
yeah,
make
it's
make
not about
things believable.
making it real. It's about making it idealized.
Absolutely.
'Cause if you make a rendering look real, like truly photo real, the client's not going to like it.
Yeah, nobody likes it.
They're going to go, "Why is there trash on the sidewalk? Why is that construction truck right where I don't want it?" You know, you can make things look truly real, but it's always, the push and pull of the artist versus the client and what makes sense for the project. Do you need to show the really dilapidated building next door? Maybe not, because that's going to get plowed and rebuilt in 9 months to a year. So, yeah,
Yep, and there's always that budget, time, resource that you have to fight for. So, absolutely understandable. And I think um, architectural renderings tends to go for, I don't know what's the right word, but it's not, they all want realism, but it's make believe. It's not necessarily
idealize.
real.
Sell that idea, sell that concept, not the thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think the other thing about this that I know this is supposed to be like the biggest city model in Lumion ever. Again, these all look like the same, a lot of the same buildings, and more than likely these are multiple different projects put together
I thought
in
about doing that
separate
myself
files.
too.
Huh?
I thought about doing that myself too, just combining all of my projects so that I make a little city out
Make
of
a
it.
super city.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do that, except I wanted to do a scene with all the projects that I've worked on and just have Godzilla come right through the middle of it.
That's that's a nice thought. I did combine like a good chunk of my retail commercial projects into a one model, and like just so that I have like sort of the infinite horizon line where I have a bunch of buildings and people. It is sort of different style because obviously they were done in different time of my experience. So that's something that I did, but it became like 2 gigs of a SketchUp file, and I just it
Aw,
just became too big to for me to like show it anywhere
only
because
2 gigs?
I know. because I cut down a lot of textures and geometry so that it is big, but it is not overly detailed in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So like I cut it down, but if I ever put through any sort of render, I can't really show this, or it just takes so long for it to be processed and all. I just didn't want to deal with it, so I ended up like cutting chunks and using a little bit of it here and there.
Yeah, yeah. So this shot that you're looking at here, I really like. We were talking about the waterfall and flat cards that look close enough. I actually think this one looks pretty good. Um, I don't know if this is a Lumion asset specifically, that little waterfall on the left that they just modified to work. But that actually looks pretty well done, in my opinion.
So this is a park that we were looking at from above, where we were
Mm-hmm.
seeing the groups of people
Yep.
kind of pasted in. So I guess they have different models, right? So there was a different model that we looked at from aerial shot, and then now there is this model where people are not necessarily copied in
Yeah, I think we're just looking at different areas because, yeah, that is a pretty impressive model.
right there.
There's a lot happening there.
But bit of this, and I work for different companies and different type of projects, but some of these things that I look at, I feel like I've done it in different projects here and there. So especially, I have to say I have modeled this before. I just have. I just have. It's I don't know. Every architect, it's kind of trendy thing, I
Oh,
guess.
interesting. Okay, so if we go back and look at the previous render of this,
This
they
one?
have a lot less trees than this render.
I see.
Like they've definitely cut down on assets depending on the views.
Oh,
So
that's true. Yeah, it's a different type of tree as well.
different trees, the trees on the roof, like that top-down view, that circular part of the structure has trees on top of it. Now it might be we're just looking at a different project altogether, but
Maybe, yeah. But
I
it
mean,
does look like this. Oh, maybe it is.
right there. If this is the same one as before, like,
Well, there's
which is,
that thing that I was talking
well, no,
about.
this is no. I take that back. This is a different. This is a completely different landscape design.
No, so here is what I've noticed. You see that the same shape over here? So it's
Hmm.
that view, same park, but I think this one is a different one. And also, there's that one. I think this is a different project because there's that blob, and the blob
No,
appears. There's no
it's just
blob
a
here.
different angle. So if you go back to
Oh, is that the blob?
1 minute in,
1 minute?
1 minute in.
Yeah,
So this is what we're looking at right now, but this looks very different from the top-down view. I think the reason it is looking so different is because of the foliage on the roof on the left side, and they may have made some changes
oh yeah,
along the
you
way. It may
remember
be.
you said there's a bit of tiling on this texture, and you see now there's tree here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it must be like a different model or different iteration of design.
I think it might just be a different iteration or a variation on what they had because it looks. I mean, it just could be the perspective, but either way, this is a very impressive amount of geometry in here.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's gotta go ahead and actually model those stripes that are circular. I had
Or
fun doing
return.
that sort of thing before.
Oh yeah, and there's a different shot just after that top-down view where they're missing the trees on top again.
Oh,
Continuity.
mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody's really gonna notice that except me.
Except except two of us who's dissecting this rendering for the first time ever by seconds.
I hope these artists never see this.
What, us doing this?
Yes, us picking apart their project.
I mean, we're constructive criticism here.
True.
So one thing I did want to mention, well, on your commercial projects, what do you do for the logos? So I see a mixture of, here's a one that you shouldn't really have, but you have it, and then logo, and then there's fashion. There were a bit of time I was like tweaking weird, like, kind of fake brand names. So literally take the logo, modify it so
Hmm.
that they sound and look slightly similar in a
I do
way.
the exact same thing.
Ex- uh, Other than here, okay. Again,
So I hate when I see just logo fashion, whatever it is. Um,
so there's Hugo Ball, and then there's a Louis Vuitton, or not all shown. But yeah, I do not like when I see logo.
I'm one half dozen to the other. A lot of times when you're trying to attract potential anchor stores, you'll use their specific branding, um, or like with their approval, or if you are trying to attract them and you don't have them on board yet, you generate a similar looking element that is not them but looks like them. So, like for Fresh Market, we would do Fresh Green.
Right,
You
right.
know, for Whole Foods, we would do like healthy foods.
Yeah.
So we would generate an asset that is similar enough to who you want it to be to generate excitement and
Mhm.
say, that's close enough without touching their brand, and still gives them an idea of what they might look like in that particular space. Because as a developer, you're trying to attract an anchor store so that you can expand and lease out the rest of the project. So, that Target, that Walmart, that Whole Foods, those anchor stores that are big, recognizable brands, they know they're going here in the prime spot, and then the other brands fill in the secondary leasing around it. So,
Yeah, and
a big mall like
that
this, you
also
want to
becomes
attract.
your asset. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to put down Arial, LOGO on everything that you do. It's not like it doesn't really sell. Like you got a great project, yet you're just butchering it, and you've got to have some sort of logo design applied to it. And I used to make a asset library where collection of images, and I turned them into a vector file so that I have an actual logo in 3D, and then I just modify a couple of letters just so that it looks and sounds similar, and then I
Mm-hmm.
can just put it on there without like eye catching into the building, yet it is good enough, not
Mm-hmm.
like just four letters.
Oh, man. Yeah, now we're getting into like the snappy shots. Like how many can we get in there of all the different design things that we've done?
It
And
is
these are some
cool.
great shots.
I feel
Some
like,
really cool stuff.
wow. So these
That is pretty impressive.
it's ambitious, I must say. It will be knocked out during value engineering, but having this blob of dome and all of these stacked patios and rooftop garden, all the F&B stuff. Yeah,
How do you get trees that size to grow on a roof?
magic.
I
Signage
forget.
logo.
I used to work. There's a guy who I worked with who used to get so angry anytime he saw a tree
Tree
on
on
the
a
roof of
roof.
a building. He was a landscape architect, and he would get, "You can't do that. You just can't. It's never gonna grow."
Yep, yep. You gotta put some light bushes up there, not a tree. But why not?
It's
Yeah,
magic.
magic.
Movie magic. Oh, we got another
Okay.
logo.
No, I was gonna pick on the tree actually. Sorry. Not on a roof garden, but rather on a balcony. Just amount of lushness in the building of this size. Nice. I love that shot. It doesn't show building design all that well, but not this one. This one. That might be like a little image tint on the glass. with combination of some of the things inside the building. Looks like I might have lost Ted here. I think I am feeding fine. So, how's everybody? Alright, I'm gonna go forward whilst Ted sorts out his internet. Maybe we play a little bit of sound. Dramatic music. Back down to bigger scale. Oops. Well, it feels like I just watched a movie. It's a repeat of same building projects, but it is nonetheless very, very impressive. I'm trying to pick out if I can see those projects that we've just looked at in much detail in this shot. I'm not sure. I'm not actually seeing those projects. Is anybody? So that might be actually like actual shot, I wonder. But again, nonetheless, it's very, very impressive. I mean, the amount of manpower and hours that you would have spent to model all of this. Ted just texted me that his internet died, so I'm gonna have to close out without him. All right. Well, it is 10 o'clock, and we are at the end of today's time, and Ted just joined on the chat, so that's great. Well, I hope everybody also enjoyed this video. Again, I'll leave a link in the description as well as in the chat, so you guys go ahead and check it out. It is quite impressive stuff. We probably kind of nitpicked just way too much of it, but we were trying to look at it from technical point of view, as well as we were trying to critique in some ways and speak of our own experiences. So I think I'm gonna close out here today. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe to my channel to continue watching these type of videos, as well as the streams that I do on Tuesdays, often time with Ted. So thanks for joining in today if you were watching on live, and thank you for watching on record as well, and I'll see you next week. Bye.